And we are live. Good evening, alienated parents, grandparents, alienated children, and all family members out there who are alienated from their kids. Welcome to Let's Talk on Parent Alienation and Family Domestic Violence. Tonight we have two special guests. I have Andy Martens from the Andy Martens Show, who's going to be here helping me speak with. Our next guest would be David Shubert. David Shubert has been an alienated father for 15 years now. David is a left behind alienated father who has been fighting to be in his daughter and stepson's life for all these years. David has a very unique story, as his children were taken out of the country to fight in order to see them. Also, David is an author who has written a couple books. And the recent one, I believe, is Your Stolen Memories, or is that the second one? I'm not really sure, but I just want to say welcome, David. Thank you for coming on to Let's Talk and with myself and Andy Martens today. So as I'm going to share the show while you tell us all about what has been happening in your life. I mean, 15 years is a long time. So,
I'll take over a little bit while you share there, Mary.
That's right. Thank you, Andy. I appreciate
that.
No
problem. Welcome, David, from the state of Colorado, like they say in the mountain time. Boy, oh boy, you've had quite the journey. If you want to give us a little background of your journey, and it's like I tell people, Mary and I have reconciled now so many times, could fill an arm, but parental alienation isn't that good when you can reconcile and keep going. It's a different story, isn't it?
Oh, it definitely is. Actually, alienation is probably one of the worst forms of abuse that any parent can have inflicted upon them. Then when you add into the mix being a left behind parent, which is where your children have been parentally abducted, doesn't matter if it abducted across the state lines or across towns or internationally, that adds in another layer of the emotional abuse that goes on against that parent. Now with me, my story goes back to 2007. When my former wife at the time had abducted both my stepson and my biological daughter and took them overseas. And I couldn't believe that it actually happened to me, because like a lot of parents that are in the same position, we actually have a lot of questions that run through our minds. Why is this happening? Am I a freak of nature? Because let's face it, it actually has happened to you. You think you're the only person that has gone through this, and that's not true. Here in the United States, we've got over 1,000 children, or 1,000 left behind parents every single year whose children were spirited out of the country by the father or the mother. But at the time, I never even heard of this stuff happening, so I thought I was a freak. Turned out later on, I learned I wasn't.
Well, you're not, David. The latest stats I have is 9% of the U.S. population is inflicted with parental alienation. 9% of 328 million people. That's a lot of people.
Oh, you betcha. It's just growing by leaps and bounds. I mean, parental alienation has actually been around for as long as anyone can remember. I've got a friend of mine. He's up there in Massachusetts. He's actually been a big part of the movement. He started out back in the early 70s. He's now in his 90s, and he's still going strong. He says, back when I started, he says, we didn't call it parental alienation. And I remember asking him, I said, Bob, what did they call it back then? He said, brainwashing. And that's really what it is. They brainwash the children into believing the other parent is, just no good, that they've done terrible things to the other parent, the children by lying to them, manipulating them, to implanting false memories of things that never occurred. You know, they'll do whatever it takes.
That's right. I am not an alienated parent, but it did hit my family. My wife's sister-in-law has not. My wife's my sister-in-law. My wife's sister has not seen her kids in 20 years. So I can tell you firsthand that we don't hear from her for months and months because the trauma and the depression is still there 20 years later.
Oh, I can imagine. That's why I've always stressed to folks when I've talked to them, when I've written my reflection articles on social media and everything else like that. It's terrible what you're going through, but you've got to learn to practice the art of self healing, because if you don't, you're just going to wind up a miserable wreck. And if the time ever comes and you ever do get your children back, you've got to be whole and complete mentally, emotionally, and in many cases physically. So for people that don't practice that self healing, it's a terrible thing on them. They'll carry the scars of that inside them for a lifetime.
Right. I like doing these shows. I don't have the patience to write a book. Is there anything that stands out for you, David, that started to motivate you to write your first book on this experience? Can you go back and let our viewers know what stood out, what really motivated you to say, I got to write this book, first book?
Well, actually, that first book was actually a collage of my reflection articles that I had written and published back in 2017, called Parental Alienation is Abuse, much like Mary's deal is. Parental alienation is child abuse. But the reason that I decided to write that was I wanted instead of people trying to scroll through social media trying to find them, it put a lot of them into book form. And one of the other reasons I did it was because, excuse my French when I say this, but the ex-wife pissed me off.
That's mild, David. That's mild. You could say a few more choice words, but I guess so.
Can.
Yeah.
Well, what it amounted to is that when my children were first abducted, okay, it shouldn't come as any surprise that one of the things that they all have in common, because most times they have an underlying mental health issue, whether it's narcissism, bipolar, whatever. But these alienators all have two things that stand out the most. Number one, they want to get revenge upon the former spouse for over a failed relationship. The other one, well, actually, there's three of them. The other one is money. They're money motivated, and they're going to try to take whatever money they can from you and anything else. The third thing that they want to do is that once they've failed in their relationship with you, they will do everything they can to regain at least part of the control they once had over you. In this case, it happens to be mental and emotional control instead of physical control. And the way they accomplish that, through the children.
Definitely.
So anyway, what it amounted to is that with my former spouse, after she abducted children, she gets over to this other country. And before we'd even gone to court to find out who the children would be living with, she goes to child support services in that country and gives them some sob story, forgetting to tell them that, hey, I abducted the children, by the way. I don't know if you know this, but that's illegal, but I want child support because of it. They started hitting me up for child support right away before any court hearing to decide that, right? So that was then the other thing was she had threatened that I either send her $7,000 and buy her a new car, or she was going to cut off all contact with me, get the children to forget who I am, blase, blase. Well, finally, after going through the Hague Convention, I did get an order of return. It took a total of 16 months from start to finish on that. They were made to come back. A judge swept aside all the evidence of what she'd done and everything else like that. and allowed her to keep the children, returned back to the country where she was just ordered from. And I'm like, oh my God, what have you been drinking this morning? To make you rule in such a asinine way. But anyway, I knew she wasn't going to obey any orders of the court in terms of allowing me to have contact with the children. Wound up going through 4 contempt hearings. She never showed up for any of them. Finally went to modification. Again, she didn't show up. I got sole custody of the children back in October of 2011. Nice. She was ordered to bring the children back, but I should have known that just like all the other orders of the court, she wasn't going to obey that order either. So a few months later, they had another modification hearing. This happened to be for child support. Took the legal review team of that child support agency 3 years to review whether she was liable to pay me child support, even though she was illegally retaining the children. They decided, yep, she's illegally retaining them, yes, but she owes that child support. She didn't like that too much. So in 2016, I'm living in Panama, Central America at the time, and I get notification for a court hearing, regarding all this. Well, that showed me that she was after the money again. She didn't want to pay it. And the judge in that case says, well, I let them know, well, your country doesn't hold jurisdiction in these matters of the children. Colorado does, and I says, further, I've got court papers that show that I have sole custody. She's illegally retaining them in your country. And, the judge told me, she says, I don't care. She's still got physical care of the children right now, so I'm not going to make her pay any more child support to you. It's like, oh, what idiot judges are out there,
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, and because she didn't bring the children back, she's got a state felony arrest warrant for her in the state of Colorado, which she now knows about, and the courts over there know about, and she ain't never coming back because she ain't going to take that risk of going to jail. But she's trying to get me now for back child support. So I'm still attending court hearings all these years later.
Sound familiar, Andy?
It does, yeah.
I've been
David, you should check our Sunday show out we did with Mary and I. And Mary's story, man, oh man, it's like life is challenging enough to put that further burden that you and Mary have to deal with, and my sister-in-law is just unconscionable. I mean, it's crazy.
I literally went to a trial 17 years after for child support when the kids were in their 30s. This is endless. I mean, you're going to go through it you've been 15 years and your children are still young. How old are your kids?
One of them is 18 and my stepson is, I think, 22 now.
Okay. So they're still quite young, but out of the court system?
Yeah.
They're out now, right?
Yeah, because they're aged out.
Yeah. So that means there's nothing you can do anymore.
No, and my daughter did find me here a couple of years ago, and last February, she had asked if I would get her back here to the U.S. And so I did get her back to the U.S. And unfortunately, she is no longer living with us. She decided she wanted to go up to Denver to live, and so she's making her home up there. But
and she's 18?
She's 18, so there's nothing I can do about it. But that's fine. I mean, she's got to spread her wings sometime in her life.
Well, that's it. Once they're 18, we have to figure, that we were 18 too at one time when we know what it was like to break away from the family, even in a loving relationship, right? So now that they're going through this, they need to identify themselves as themselves instead of being with the alienator, because they've been living vicariously through the mother's abuse.
Correct. And I, knowing her mother, I can only imagine the abuse that the children went through growing up with her. I mean, she is like off the wall with her anger and mood swings and stuff. And I remember when my mom was still alive, and I talked to her occasionally. She says, you need to start documenting this stuff. And I documented it this for about a month and a half, and I actually had, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 pages filled of typed out notes from my computer. And like, you know what? That's enough typing and stuff. I've got enough to know that she isn't quite right, And I've still got those log entries.
Yes, mental health plays a huge issue on this, because not a healthy parent wouldn't do this. A healthy parent would promote the other parent, knowing the other parent wasn't a very healthy person, but instead of embellishing on the abuse, we learn to give in. 50-50 equals shared parenting, but that's not enough for them. They want it all. They never liked sharing as a kid. How are they going to share as an adult?
Right. In touching on that subject, shared parenting, 50-50 parenting, well, that's all great if you can make it work, if both parents are understanding the best interest and the needs of the children. But here's the problem. When you've got one parent that is resistant against that idea, that whole scenario of 50-50 and shared parenting is a bunch of malarkey, if you ask me, because all the good that you might be doing, as soon as they go back to the other parent who doesn't align with the same views, they're going to undo it.
That's part of the problem, yeah. There's a pushback from the narcissist. He doesn't want to give up control, or she.
No, they don't. And that's what it is. These narcissists, bipolar, sociopath,
Right.
whatever their underlying mental health issue is, they all have to be in control of their home, be in control of their spouse, be in control of their children, their work environment. Every aspect they have to be able to control. And when they lose control of even a friend, much like you do a spouse, all hell's going to break loose. You might as well run for the hills because they're coming gunning for you.
That's right. They can't control their own selves, their own emotions, their own abuse, but yet they want to control everything else around them.
Right. And I think we all know we can't. There are just some things that are uncontrollable in life.
That's right.
Some things we shouldn't control.
And that is why we have a partner to help us stabilize our, environment and our healthy relationships. If two people can't do it, how is one person going to do it?
No.
So
that's right.
I
David,
believe we're having some technical.
Oh, are we? I can hear you.
You can hear me? Okay, because
Yeah.
I'm having technical difficulties here with StreamYard and Facebook. So just keep on talking.
Oh well, I don't see that end of it. Oh, okay.
Oh, okay, good.
David, you said your ex. I'm wondering if your ex was married before you had somebody else, because sometimes these narcissists hide the traits. They don't allow people to see it until it's too late.
She actually was married. She'd married an older gentleman, as I understand. I don't know much about this individual, but he ended up dying of some form of cancer. I think colon cancer or something like that. And that's when her and I had met and such. What their relationship was, I have no idea. I don't know if she did the same thing to him, or if they were lovey-dovey couple or whatever. She's very closed mouth when we were together as far as her past life, even like with her family.
Right.
I didn't know much about her growing up. I didn't know much about her family. Very guarded. And I think that's probably the way it is with a lot of these narcissistic bipolar types. You know,
Oh,
you
it
know.
is for a reason because they don't want you to know the history of what's going on in their family because control is their genetic. And if you find that knowledge out, you're going to run away from it. So they keep that deliberately within themselves. And then a year or two later, the dam breaks and all hell breaks loose kind of thing.
Oh yeah, they wait until they've got you fully ensnared and into their web of deceit.
They love bomb you
Yeah,
and gaslight you along the way.
Yeah.
they
Mary,
lasso
Mary
you.
knows. Mary knows all about that.
Yeah, they hunt you down. Once they got their eye on you and they want you, they will not never leave you. And I have a lot of letters because my partner went and joined the army, so he wrote to me multiple times, and wrote things that seemed really odd at the time, but today it explains it. I will never leave you. I will never leave you. In every letter, I will never leave you. And now that I read them over, because he returned them all after 40 something years, why would a narcissist keep all these abusive letters that went on over the past? But it was beyond me. But he gave it back, so it's good literature to use for evidence what parent alienation stems from, and it's usually all from their childhood abuse that they went through, because my ex was alienated as a child, never to have a father, so he knew all
Hmm.
the tactics. Everything that he said to me since we were 18 years old, it all fell right into my lap when my children were born. And had I known that this was a generational thing, I probably would have ran even faster and never had children with him, because I saw how dangerous and abusive he was over the years. Now my adult children fell right into his same, like they're molded with mental health issues. Everything that my ex went through, my kids are going through. Millions of kids are going through it. And it's all because of the court system allowing one parent to take the other parent away. Now, if these court systems would give equal shared parenting to both parents without evidence of abuse, that would raise children healthy, mentally, emotionally strong, and then they would raise their own children and their loving partners the same way. But no, they're not doing it anymore. They don't even want to have a relationship. They don't want to have kids. So it's pretty bad out there. So what do you think you can do now, David? Now that your kids are all of age, and I mean, is there any hope for you? Do you think?
I don't think for my stepson that he's going to ever come around. As far as my daughter, it's hard to say what's going to happen on that situation there. It's kind of like stand back, wait and see. She either wants to come back to me, or the alienation is just taken too strong of a root that she knew that she didn't want to be around her mom. I get the gist of that's the reason she came here. But at the same time, the alienation took root to the point that she didn't want to be around me. Hard to say what her mom had said about me, as far as truth versus lie, manipulation, um, false memories that might have been implanted. Who knows? All I can do is just kind of give her a space, let her know that I'm here, give her a call once in a while, leave her a voicemail and say, hey, I'm always here if you need me. And don't try to push them. You just drive them away even further.
Before you were alienated from your stepson, how long have you had him as a child? Like, was it most of his life?
The first, he was almost 2 years old when he came into my life, and I helped raise him for an additional 6 years.
Did he
So he
get to
and I
see?
were actually very close.
Did he get to see his biological father?
He's dead.
Oh, okay. Sorry to hear that. So,
From his standpoint, he probably isn't sorry. He's probably glad that he doesn't have to deal with the ex-wife no more.
From the sounds of it, for sure.
well, most of us don't want to, but it's not good for the child to have a parent that's dead. I mean, I know when my
No.
father passed away after I found him, being alienated from him for 18 years. I'm now going on 4 years this Sunday that my father passed away. And it hurts more today than it did while I was alienated, because now I don't have a chance to speak with him anymore. Even though I got to spend 5 years with him, that 5 years went so fast because he was in palliative care. He couldn't get out
Right.
of the hospital and stuff like that. And that's a rotten time to find your parent after being alienated. And these alienated children need to understand that if they don't reunify with their parents today, they will find them on their deathbed, and it'll hurt more, because then they'll feel guilty about, bad mouthing, gaslighting that loving parent all those years to finding them on the deathbed. It's very hard, even for myself. I know my kids are alive, and that makes me feel still alive. But had I, if one of my children had committed suicide or something, that would destroy me, knowing that I was taken away from them and I couldn't help them. But yet
Hmm.
today they are crying suicide. They're crying for help, but there's nobody out there to help them, because there's really no support out there for the kids. We found one, Tina Mayer, yesterday from the Resolution Center in Florida, and she seems to now educate therapists on the true facts of parent alienation, and that's what we need. We need these kind of strong therapists, doctors, lawyers who are there to really advocate for these kids, instead of saying, yeah, take me on, and I'm going to charge you fifty to $100,000 to get your kids back. That's wrong. What we need is someone who's through the heart, that
Right.
is there to help us without putting a price tag on our kids, because the court system's already done that. And now to get our kids back, we have to spend money again. What do you think about that, David?
Well, the divorce and child custody industry in the U.S., it's a $60 billion situation, and nobody's willing to give up any of the money that they earn from it. And that goes from the child psychologist to the guardian ad litems to the attorneys to the actually even our family courts and this local governments and stuff. Nobody's willing to give up any of that money, and as long as they can make money, they don't mind writing on the backs of the children. They really don't. And the bad part is that I don't know what they call it up there in Canada, but here in the U.S. it's called Title 4D funding. Okay, what that amounts to is that for every dollar that's collected in child support, depending upon their individual state, the state will get back $2 to $3 back into their pocket, in addition to the dollar that they are giving to the parent supposed to be getting money. Okay, guess where that money's coming from? Social Security, the money that we've been paying in for to help cushion our retirement. And they keep telling us that, well, Social Security is going to end in the next, by 2035 or whatever. They keep changing the year. And it's like, well, quit robbing us to pay the local governments and the family courts and stuff like that, And it's like, my God,
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's all about money. I
it is.
remember when um, when the judge allowed the children 15, 17, and 18 to go with the father, It wasn't that the judge wanted to give the kids to the father. It was because the kids said they wanted to go with the father. So the judge didn't order any child support from me, which was really bad because the father wanted child support. He didn't want to pay spousal support. So the judge made him pay spousal support. I didn't have to pay child support. So he literally used my kids, saying, well, if you don't pay child support, you ain't getting the kids. But at the same time, I opened trust funds for the kids. I begged the kids to come see me if they needed money. I gave them money for their education, but it didn't matter because the alienator had control of these kids to the point where the only way they would come see me if the dad said, go see your mother.
Mm-hmm.
The alienator needs to release the kids from their control. And if they don't, the kids will never, ever step foot to see that alienated parent. Because I know when my stepmother said, your father's dying, he's on his deathbed, go see him. Well, why didn't you tell me to go see him 15 years prior to that? Why did you keep him away from me? Why is it it's okay that I get to see him when you tell me to go see him? You know, so this is what I noticed in alienating tactics of these alienators who have such a stronghold on these kids. And if they'd only just say, go see your mom or go see your dad, go see grandma, the kids would go.
Mm-hmm. Well, they'd wait till the very last second because they know if something bad really does happen, it takes the burden of guilt off their shoulders, and they can go, well, see, I told my children to go see their other parent. I didn't deny them. It's like, yeah, you did. All them years you denied them until the very last second. And when you knew that parent was going to die, it's like, ooh, I better do something so I don't look like the bad person.
Yeah. Well, I when I wrote to my kids, they would unblock me and block me over the 17 years. But when I did get a chance to talk to them, I'd say, go see your grandmother or your grandfather. And the reply was, give me $1,000, I will. So everything that they learned, it was, you had to buy their attention, buy their love. And I found that very disturbing because why would a child, not a child, they're teenagers, why would a teenager say that about a grandparent, you know, that give me money and I'll go see them?
It's a learned tactic.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something that they were just like hating a parent. They weren't brought into this world and born with the thought of, I'm going to hate my mom or I'm going to hate my dad. It's a taught behavior. Same thing with this money. The parent, the alienating parent is going, well, you know what? You can't see the children unless I get that money. And they're teaching the children these same lessons. Well, I'll go see you, but you're going to give me money. You know, these are all the wrong lessons that are being taught to our children and stuff. And instead of going, well, you know what? This is your mom, this is your dad. We had problems, but that doesn't involve you. And they may have some issues, but it's still your mom or your dad, and they love you and they want to spend some time with you. But an alienator doesn't see it that way. It's like, you know, the heck with it.
Right. They're learning blackmail, extortion. And this is all coming from the family court system that they're learning because the judges make them pick a parent. You know, you go with your dad, dad's got more money, or you go with mom because mom's got more money. They're teaching these kids to go where the money is, not where the love is.
Actually, they're not teaching the children to go where the money is because on that deal I told you about with the Title 4D funding, okay, I'm going to put out a quick scenario for you. You got two parents and they walk into court. They're each vying for custody of the children. One parent can afford to pay child support of $1,000 a month. The other one is $2,000 a month. Who do you think is going to get the child?
The 2000.
No. The parent who can afford to pay the least amount, because if they give it to the parent who can afford to pay the 2,000, the parent that can pay the 1,000. Remember, Title 4D funding pays the state 2 to 3 times that amount. So now they're
Oh,
only getting
right.
2,000. But if they give it to the parent who can only afford to pay the 1,000, now on the other side, the parent that can pay 2,000, now they're going to make 4 to 6,000. See what I'm saying?
Oh, I see.
And a lot
Hmm.
of people don't understand this Title 4D funding stuff, and that's why it's good to put it out there so that if there's any thoughts that no, that can't be right, go Google it, do your own research, and you'll find out that what's being told is the truth.
Did you know that, Andy?
Yes, I did. It's a total scam and not right at all.
Yeah.
And the bad part about it is these judges now supposed to be that they're elected in. Okay, that's not always the case. Sometimes they're appointed in, and they want to keep their jobs. They're making 140 to 190,000 dollars a year, and in some cases, the judges are actually getting a bonus. Okay, of another. Well, like in Texas, they'll get a $25,000 bonus. They don't want to give up this money. They don't want to give up the prestige of being a judge, the title anyway. And so they're going to do whatever it takes to keep the upper echelon of the legal system in their corner. That means, okay, I'm going to fill the coffers up with money that we can collect, and I don't care if I hurt, an innocent parent or child. I'm not going to worry about the best interest standards. I'm just going to help keep the money coming in so I can keep my money coming into my bank account from the money you're paying me.
How sad is that?
Yeah, and basically with the best interest standards, those words anymore with a lot of these judges are nothing more than filler words to take up empty spaces on a parental responsibilities order because they can't think of anything better.
That's that's sad. So, what's your next step? What are you planning on doing? You writing another book?
I am going to be starting another book, actually. This time here, I've been in contact with some parents who are willing to share their stories with me. They've already began, and in the next month or two, I'll begin with the actual writing of it. But these are going to be both mothers and fathers because let's face it, alienation does happen to both sides of the fence. All
Yes.
right. So even though they're basically the same stories, they're all uniquely different. And I think it's important that people understand what's really happening out there. And by them sharing their stories, maybe these other ones who are in fear of others finding out that they've spoken and shared their stories, maybe they'll do the same later on down the road. But
Right.
in the meantime, I'll continue writing my reflection articles on social media. I'll continue working on my blog website that we recently launched for alienated parents and grandparents and things like that. And at the same time, now working with the YouTube channel aspect of things.
That's great. So you're out there advocating as well as writing, helping yourself, dealing with, not seeing your kids. Are you out there like in groups that we can reach out to?
No, actually not. I've got my hands full. It's really difficult for me to get stretched out too far. So, I mean, have I been to some conferences in the past? Yeah. Do I get a chance to go to them very often? No. Simply because I just don't have the time between the writing and, well, that's even like the YouTube channel videos. By golly, that takes what about a day to write up something that you takes 15 minutes of speaking, and then you've got to go ahead and upload it. You've got to do the bring it back down. Then you've got to do the editing. Then you've got to. There's so much on that, and then working with the blog and coordinating with the other people that are writing and such and contributing. Yeah, I really have time to go out there and go to these support groups.
Yeah,
I'd
I
love to.
truly understand that. I mean, it takes me all day just to do one broadcast. And it's a lot of work. It's a lot of energy to speak with alienated parents who are suffering deep down inside, because it's like a living death. People don't understand what parent alienation is, but it's once you lose your child and never get to see them, it's like living a death every day, knowing they're out there, but you can't see them. And to hear a lot of these parents that are saying they want to die, they want to commit suicide, it's so heartbreaking. And we want to be there for everybody, but it's so hard to be even there for ourselves. But we do the best we can in order to step forward. And once our kids get to the age of 18 and 19, and then they move on to 20s and 30s, it's not easier, because we have grandchildren coming now. So we think about the grandchildren. So it's just a chain reaction, one after another after another. And, the kids don't get to see their aunts, their uncles, just like Andy doesn't get to see his niece and nephews, your wife's brother,
That's
right,
right,
Andy?
exactly. The narcissist, in my case, my wife's youngest brother alienated my wife's sister's kids. Can you imagine, David? Right in the family. How bad is that? And the narcissist doesn't care if the family sees his kids, and they're alienated not only from their direct nieces and nephews, but all of their family. The youngest brother's kids don't see my children, don't see the other brother's children. So it's a selfish. When you have a narcissistic frame of mind, you control, and there's a lot of selfishness and no empathy. They don't care the damage they do in the family.
No, the bad part about parental alienation, it has no boundaries.
No, that's
It
right.
can be, it may be initially against the former spouse or partner, but it extends to all family members, all friends, all associates and stuff that it gets its tentacles hooked into and stuff. And they actually, the more their tentacles spread, the happier the alienator is. And it doesn't matter. A lot of people say, "Oh, that'll never happen to me." That's a bunch of bullpucky, because I don't care if you're rich, I don't care if you're poor, I don't care if you're famous or whatever. If alienation comes knocking at your door, you have no choice but to open it, because just shutting it isn't going to stop it.
That's right. Look at all the movie stars today crying, losing their children, and they've got money. They've got huge money. And
Tom Cruise wasn't able to attend the Emmys. I mean, his package came back to haunt him with Nicole Kidman. But,
yes,
again, when you've got a bad personality, I'm convinced that Tom Cruise is a narcissist or something, because he's just unreal. And, Alec Baldwin, all these guys, they can't be married to one person. They might be good looking guys, but they run into a brick wall. It just doesn't work.
right. Wasn't it Judy Garland? The same thing.
Judy Garland, yeah.
You
And
know,
again, and my uncle was so I grew up with a dysfunctional family around me. But you know what the result is? With my uncle drank himself to death and died at 69. Judy Garland ran into alcohol problems. Sort of manifests itself. They can't deal with it. So at the end, the world crashes in on these people.
yes,
Hmm.
addictions.
Oh yeah, that's very prevalent, and I'm actually one of those kind of people. Um, the pain, the heartache, the torment, the chatter that goes on in your mind constantly because of the alienation, and wondering why it's happening to you. How can we fix this? Things like that. It drives you about half buggy, so we tend to self-medicate. And I'm guilty of that myself. I love my beer, and I did it for 50 years, but it got worse after
Mm.
this all happened. Fortunately, I don't drink anymore, but um, no, it takes its toll, this alienation stuff. I have a friend of mine. He's a doctor up there in New York. Was an activist and such because he'd gone through this stuff. And I remember one time, fact is, he was my first interview that I'd ever been interviewed back in 2016 when I was living in Panama. I remember he told me, he says, David, he says, if we weren't crazy before, after going through this crap, he says, we're certainly crazy now. And I tend to agree with him because we were normal.
Yes.
And I remember an article I once wrote years ago. I am who you created, and that is very much true. We might have been one person before the alienation or an abduction or whatever happened to us, but because of that and what they continued to do to us, we became a product of their own creation.
We did. Absolutely. And it never will leave us because we're always stuck with it now. It's part of us. And all we can do is really live for ourselves. Any kind of contact we have with our kids, whether it's good or bad, at least we have it.
Right.
Something. I get a lot of verbal abuse, but at least I know the kids are talking to me. I know how to handle it because I dealt with it for all those years before I was alienated.
Right.
And so it kind of helped us alienated parents to deal with what lies ahead of having our kids taken. Some of us deal with it good, some of us don't. Some of us fall into addictions, some of us don't. I was at the bottom of the barrel when I was alienated because I was already dying from severe injuries from car accidents. So all I could do was rise up. I couldn't go down anymore. I was falsely arrested. I had no home. I had no money. I had nothing, no kids. I was in a wheelchair. So I ended up in a shelter. What am I going to do? Die? No, I was going to fight. And I fought my way out of it. And here I am almost 18 years later. And I'm so proud of myself because I threw away that wheelchair. I threw away that walker, the canes. I'm here. I'm marching. I'm showing my kids I'm not that loser their father made me out to be. And that, even though they were 15, 17, and 18, they knew what they were doing. They just didn't know how to stop it, how to say, Mom, we love you. But by their verbal abuse, I can read in between the lines that I don't mean to talk like this, but I have to because it's what Dad's telling me to do or Mom's telling me to do. That's what I read into these things. And I know they're struggling. And if they were like me, it might take them 18 years to understand that, wow, I need to see my mom or I need to see my dad. But I mean, I don't want anyone out there to ever give up. I found my dad. I'm just waiting to find my kids again. Will it happen soon? I doubt it because I just finished the trial and it re-traumatized them to a point where it might take another 10 years before they come around. I'm not sure, but let's pray for all these alienated people out there that, that the judges can see our stories, hear our stories, and know what we're going through and literally see what our children are going through now. When they're 2, 3, 4 years old, they can't see all the trauma, but when they're 18, 20, 30, you can see what they have dealt with, and it's bad. So, David, give us your last words. We're up to almost an hour here, and I'm going to have Andy ask you one more question before we go. Andy?
Right. Yeah, I was going to ask you, David, how are your books doing on Amazon? Are they doing better than you thought they would, or?
No, actually, I targeted my books more towards the alienated parents because I wanted to. Part of the reason I wrote that story was threefold. Number one, Um, it's a kind of helps to progress myself in the art of self healing that I've always stressed about. Right? So that helped me there. Number two, I wanted to let other alienated parents know they're not alone. That and they're going through all this. So by sharing my experience that I've had over the years, it shows them, hey, I'm not alone. There's other people like me out there. But the other thing is, I wanted to let those that aren't alienated or left behind parents to know this is a real problem. Now, as far as the book is concerned, my initial aspect was gearing it towards the alienated parents. Unfortunately, a lot of these parents are financially destitute because they don't have their children. They're paying the child support now. They're having to struggle paying their bills, court costs. Maybe they're going through therapy. So it's a type of a deal that I didn't get a whole lot of of the alienated parents ordering the books. So I'll move on to the next phase and see what happens there. Hopefully, it'll do better because it'll be targeted towards non-alienated parents who aren't worried about it, financially.
Right. People don't
So,
realize that it is expensive to get a book done. It's not a $10 deal. It costs some money to print and all of that.
It
yeah,
does, and I just like you guys. I mean, a lot of folks seem to think that okay, I'm going to do a blog, or I'm going to do a book, or I'm going to go ahead and put on a podcast. That there's nothing involved. It's just a matter of setting up a camera, getting in front of your keyboard. No, it's a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of work, and certainly a lot of money that goes into this. So, for those that don't realize it, we're not doing these things 100% for free.
no,
You know, they just don't
That's
realize
right.
it's coming out of our personal bank accounts to help them.
right. It's like my events that I've done over the 15 years now. They were costing me thousands of dollars to pay for musicians. People thought they were all coming for free, but we still had to pay. And,
Hmm.
but it helped raise awareness. It brought people out. It gave, parents hope, knowing that we have music events, we have all these venues out there to help alienation be more out there instead of hidden, because the courts are no cameras, the courts have no jury, the courts have family courts have no one there to expose all this abuse that's in behind the hidden doors. And this is
Hmm.
what we're trying to do, is get cameras in there, because they have it in criminal court. Why can't they have it in family court? Because they're using the children as an excuse that they don't want to be exposed at a young age. That's not true. They don't want to be exposed. The children are not the one that's going to be exposed, because they don't even have the kids in court. The kids are behind the scenes, right? They go in the chambers.
Kind of funny, right? And it's kind of funny you're talking about those cameras because I didn't mention this before, but I actually had a total of two modification hearings. And the first modification hearing that I had was with an attorney that I had hired off of Craigslist, which I don't recommend doing that. My attorney was late getting in there, totally torqued off the judge. And when the attorney did show up, obviously no cameras, but they do have audio recording, right? And so what happens? The attorney shows up, outlines what's been happening over the past four contempt hearings. Obviously, the ex-wife wasn't present, which she did have the right to appear via telephone. She didn't. And the judge, believe it or not, says, "Well, I see no significant change of circumstances, so I'm therefore going to dismiss your motion for modification." And like, really, four contempt hearings, no contact with the children since she was given them, and all this other stuff, and no significant change of circumstances. I'm going to go ahead and get a copy of this recording. Guess what happened? I went to get a copy of the audio transcript. The judge conveniently forgot to turn the recording
Oh,
equipment on.
of course.
So I had to wait another 11 months to get a new modification,
Wouldn't they have
get
the
a new
stenographer
attorney.
though talking?
There was no stenographer.
No?
Just
Wow.
me, her, and the attorney, the Cracker
Wow.
Jack attorney.
Sad, isn't it? That's like my trial. Just months before the trial began, my lawyer was taken to court by the Ontario Law Society and legal aid because he was lying to the judge. He was giving alcohol and drugs to the people. He was telling us clients that our cases were giving him life-threatening illnesses. He got disbarred right in the middle of my trial. So he threw my trial. I had to literally hand in the towel because I thought I was going to jail because that's what my ex wanted. He wanted to rearrest me. So here all the paperwork that I thought was going in didn't go in. So when I got a new lawyer, luckily I got the original. He jumped in to save my ass, but at the same time I didn't get to speak. I couldn't because I knew the judge didn't care. The ex used my three kids as witnesses. So
Mm-hmm.
I had no winning chance to prove anything, but I did. And I opted out to save the children because I watched them suffer on camera. They had psychotic episodes. They were
Mm-hmm.
crying. I mean, crying was a lot of acting because I know my kids, even though
Right.
you don't see them, you still know them because you raised them for 18 years already. And
Right.
but the games they play, some of these lawyers, is incredible. And to have a lawyer disbarred just before your trial, that's pretty bad. you know so I strongly recommend parents to know who they hire. To if they don't know what parent alienation is, get rid of them, because it's your children that you're fighting for. You're not fighting to make the lawyer money, because lawyers don't care. If they're not there for your children, they're not there for you. So, but
Well,
David, thank you.
yeah, you're welcome.
All right. Thanks, David. It was a great show, and we wish you all the best in your ongoing battle with this because it's a long, drawn out battle that seems to have no end.
Well, someday it's going to have to end because
Yes.
I can't live forever.
That's right. It's
No. If
life
somebody
is
wants
too
to reach out
short.
and contact you, David, how do they find you?
They can either go to my blog, A Parenting Affair, or they can go to my Facebook page called Hopeful Father.
Hopeful Father?
Hmm.
Okay.
I've had it for a number of years. There's a lot of my reflection articles that are on it, but people can go ahead and post a comment, or they can instant message me on that, and I'll make sure to respond back to them. But then again, they can always buy the darn book. you know.
All
I don't
right.
want her to bark. She started. Oh, sorry. But anyways, thank you so much, David. Andy, thank you as well.
All right.
Don't jump off. I just got anything
right.
else to say before we end?
No, I think we're good. We wish you all the best, David, and keep us posted. Stay in touch with Mary, and we'll have you on again, either on Let's Talk or my show, Real Talk, on parental
Yes.
alienation.
I'd find it a pleasure.
Thank you again. So don't jump off. I'm just going to say goodbye to our viewers, alienated parents, grandparents, adult children, moms, dads. Don't give up. Our kids need us, no matter what they say, no matter what they call us. We need to be the bigger person. I'm not going to say suck it up, but it's not them speaking. It's the alienator. So anyways, everybody, thank you for tuning in today on Let's Talk with David Shubert and Andy Martens from the Andy Martens Show. I'm Mary Kovacs signing off with Molly and me. Thank you, everybody. Good day.